This is Cody Hosey, a 2016 graduate of Griffith High School and 2019 draft pick of the Los Angeles Dodgers. Welcome to This Week in Baseball Across Indiana.
Folks, welcome to our first ever live This Week in Baseball Across Indiana. The rookie day for the host here. I think it's fair to say. Let's start off, folks. If you can see the screen there, you'll see I've got barbershop talk as our first item on the agenda. I just want to go around the horn here and talk about what's going on in the baseball world this week. Steve, let's start with you. Can you hear me okay, Steve?
Yep.
The
How you doing?
Tell us about what articles you've written this week and what do you got working on?
Last week, the two articles I posted, last one was on Kyle Boynton. He's the assistant coach at Bethel University in Mishawaka, Indiana. He's got an interesting story. He's originally from Oregon. He's been on this is his 8th season on the staff in 2022. He's quite a guy. He splits his time between his day job, which is a worship leader and coaching the baseball team. He and he has the distinct. He doesn't know anybody else that ever played 4 years of college baseball with cerebral palsy. So that's kind of a neat thing about Kyle. He's a really nice guy. Anybody that knows him, he's just upbeat and. Uh, I was overdue doing that story because I don't
Well,
count
we
for a
had a
while.
chance to talk to him at IHSBCA, and yeah, he's an engaging individual.
Yeah, he,
You know,
he
that's
really is. He really is.
the
And then I talked to Adam Lind a
oh,
couple of days before that, and so that was I've been pursuing Adam, and I was able to talk to him. And interesting thing about him is that he was uh, in the big leagues for over 10 years. A lot of them most of them with the Toronto Blue Jays. He's Anderson Highland grad, and he's 38. He's been out of baseball as a player about a year and a half or two. He decided he wanted to go back to school, and he's studying Spanish, and he's going to get immersed and go to Chile in the spring. And he thinks he'd be more marketable when he goes back into baseball. He's got he's got he's got younger. His oldest child is 10. So, but when it's time to go back, he figures the way things are now, knowing how to speak Spanish is helpful. So that's
I'll
what
tell you,
he's.
I read that article you wrote on him, and one of the he was up there competing with our own Sweet Lou there with the batting average he had in high school. I think Lynn batted like what 600 plus in high school.
Yeah, 675. That's not 833, but that's nothing to sneeze at.
Well, he needs to go to the Sweet Lou School of Batting right there. I tell you what, Sweet Lou, let's bring it over to Lafayette. What do you got going on this week? What did you have going on last week? And tell us a little bit about what you're working on for the show. And you got a lot coming up here with everything you're doing for Jeff and the Aviators this year, Lafayette Jeff, that is.
Well, I met with Coach Pat O'Neill yesterday. I got his past scorebooks from Brownsburg High School. I just finished a project. I've got Tucker Barnhart's all his stats and max preps. So hopefully
Nice.
we'll get that passed on to Tucker, and he can start showing off some of his high school heroics. Uh, Also working on getting a few other umpires on board to come to our website. Mike DuBois, he's worked at least 4 state finals. I talked to him about baseball across Indiana this week, and he's real excited about some ideas he's got. Also working on some emails, getting ready to send to all the umpires associations to get them on board. Um, I guess the other big thing was at the clinic. I mentioned, I probably hadn't mentioned to our audience, but I'd mentioned to you that we had been in contact with Brian Abbott about when the North South All-Star Game sites were in the future. And he happened to say that Indiana Wesleyan was the site in 2022. And I asked him where the site was in 2023, and he said it was open. So the bells and whistles have still been ringing. I've contacted the mayor of Lafayette and got a hold of the athletic director at Lafayette, Jeff, and everybody's real excited. Brian did talk to Justin Gardner, the athletic director at Jeff, and we've got the ball rolling here to hopefully get that game in Lafayette at the new Loeb Stadium in 2023.
Well, I know you've been working on that. That wouldn't be a better place to have it. I tell you what. I mean, all the places really, but I know that's high on your agenda to get that done, and that'd be neat. That stadium's perfect fit for it. Mark, let's go up to you. We got to say first, we got our buddy Papa Beach is on his way back from Florida right now. I'm hoping he's got this tuned in. He'll give us a report card when he gets back to Indiana. You know, he was down there in 72-degree weather, I think he said, all week, and just kind of rubbing it in. Mark, you had a coaches clinic going on this week. What else do you have going on?
That was our big thing this week. We hosted Thursday night, we hosted a coaches clinic. We had great speakers. We had Kyle Baker from University of St. Francis, Shea Beecham, a former player from Huntington University. He's a guy now. And Josh Brock from Manchester University came and spoke. We had about 20 coaches come in.
You have those pretty frequently, don't you? 'Cause, I mean, I think you've had 3 in the last, 5-6 months.
Coaches clinics.
Mhm.
This was the first one this year. I try to do 2 a year, and the hard part about doing them is trying to pick the right time. The timing of the day, the week, and the month. So I'm just playing with it. And last year we did one in January, one in February, and they were both about the same as far as attendance goes. And so this year I did the one in January, and I was surprised. It was mostly high school coaches there. A lot of times they're mostly youth league coaches, and this was high school coaches there that showed up. So that was good. I think I'm going to do another one in April, beginning of April, around the time that the youth teams start to get going, and maybe try to help them out a little bit.
Well, it's a good opportunity, and I think you offer them for free. I don't want to speak for you here, but
there's no fee to come. Sometimes that makes people think they're not going to get much. If you don't pay, you don't get. But the case is I just want to promote baseball, and I want to help coaches get better. No one was there when I started. I had to figure it out myself. So it's kind of nice to know that, if you're a new coach and just starting out, you got resources that you can come and watch and then ask questions.
Well, I tell you, you say it's not a very good deal. I was at one where you had Josh Van Meter, and then of course you got Chris's his son, who's the one of the coaches at Huntington that was there at this one. So I mean, you've got some people showing up there, and
we get good speakers. There's no doubt about it. The speakers are good. It's just I don't know why more coaches don't come.
Right. Well, I'll tell you what, I don't know where Steve went. Steve hopped out for just a minute, but that's why we got multiple people on the show. We're going to come and go and keep it moving forward. The topic for today's show is history of baseball in Indiana. And we're talking teams this week. Next week, we're going to talk players. Really, we're looking at Steve just messaged me, said he's trying to reconnect. Like I said, this is live TV, folks. You got a couple non-AV people here that are doing a live show. But let's go. Before we get into it, I want to talk about what are we talking about with this BAI regions thing. That's up on the website. You may have seen it. I've explained a little bit in the past, but in general, high school has their separation. Little League has their separation. American Legion has theirs. We wanted to come up with one way where we could separate the state that would cross all levels of baseball in Indiana. So we came up with this BAI regions. Matter of fact, we've updated it already a couple times, I think, because I think on the graphic, matter of fact, Jeff was just reminding me, on the graphic that you see on the website, it shows Brownsburg, in, I think, the central region there, Region 5. Is that what that was, Jeff? I think it was.
It's 7 now, which has
Right.
got it.
And 7 is what it should be. But I think that we changed it. And who knows? We may change it again. The reason I changed that, if you see those numbers along the right, that is the number of high schools in each region. So that Region 7 actually, just because of population density, obviously there's a lot in Lafayette and everything like that, but we wanted to increase it a little bit more. So just to separate them, we put those northwest corner schools of Indianapolis. So like Brownsburg and Zionsville, that's like the southeast border of that Region 7. Then it goes up northwest from there. Whereas, that Region 4, the schools just south of Brownsburg are the east border of that Region 4. So you're looking at Avon, Plainfield, etc. Those moving west, that's that border. And on the south side, you're looking at that Region 3 right there. The border really is Greenwood. Greenwood is the northern border of that Region 3. Then it goes south from there. Same way on Region 6. Anderson, of course, that's a little bit farther away. I believe Lawrence is actually in Region 5. Lawrence is actually the east border of that Region 5 right there. So let's get into it. We're talking, we had Cody Hosey, if you heard that. We had Cody Hosey bring us in this morning. The reason I wanted to put him in there, and we really appreciate that. I got to give a shout out to Brian Jennings. Of course, Cody Hosey played for Brian Jennings. He graduated, I can't think off the top of my head when he graduated, but they were in the state finals. It's been probably 5-6 years ago, I think. There's Steve Craw. I see Steve Craw joining us here. Perfect timing there, Steve. As we go into, Steve, you got a little bit of time here. He's still connecting to audio. We got a little bit of time because before we get into the BAI regions, here we go. Hardy's top 5 for January 30th, 2022. If you're just tuning into this, make sure you go to baseballacrossindiana.com and you can view the full episode of This Week in Baseball Across Indiana. Our topic today, all-time best team names from the state of Indiana. We're talking mascots and monikers. We're known for them. Top 5 unique high school team names. We got 2 of them. First, we're going to do current, but first, before that, we're going to talk honorable mention because we have so many. Here's our honorable mention. Any of these could have been on the top 5 for sure. I'll tell you what, if you want the full list, go to baseballacrossindiana.com. Click that media tab. Go down to Hardy's Fan Zone. I've got the full list of the great historical mascot names. Now, here we go, our top 5 unique current high school team names in the state of Indiana. Number 5, Rising Sun Shiners. Cool enough right there. That could be number 1 on any other state's list. Number 4, River Forest Ingots. Number 3, Purdue Polytech Techies. I'm a techie. I had to throw that one in there. Number 2, Northeast Du Bois Jeeps. How do you not make that number 1? Here's how you not make it number 1. Shoals Jug Rocks. You talk about unique current high school team names. What is a Jug Rock? That's a Jug Rock right there. Big standing stone they have there in Shoals, Indiana. Also on their lid. Cool lid, by the way. Now, let's talk top 5 unique historical team names. These are teams that no longer exist. This is fun. Number 5, Bloomingdale Immortals. They they moved into Turkey Run and then now became modern-day Park Heritage, known as the Wolves. Number 4, the Epsom Salts. Yeah, they're North Davies Cougars currently. Number 3, Fontenette Beantowners, currently the Terre Haute North Patriots. Number 2, Smithville Skibos. Somebody needs a nickname named Skibo. Hey, Skibo, go rake the field. But that was a mascot name. Bloomington South Panthers is who they are currently, but how do you beat that? Number 1 of all time, the Cambridge City Womp Rats. Cambridge City Lincoln Golden Eagles currently. They got a pretty cool hat there, too. That was the top 5 all-time Indiana best team names. If you want to see the full episode, go to baseballacrossindiana.com. Thank you. You see on the right there, let's go back. We're not going to go back a slide. We're not going to do Hardy's top 5 again. So, we're talking history. What you see on the right, as we talked about at the beginning before our first technical difficulty, was that we identified the regions. And what we're going to do is we're going to just go through these from 1 to 11. What you see right there, I put the question out at earlier in the week on where does baseball have the richest history in Indiana? Well, looking at this graphic right here, this is just high schools. This could be a conclusion or an answer to that question, because you see the Southwest, that's Region 1, has 19 state titles, 50 semi-state titles, but that's just high school. So let's get going here. Let's go around the state. We're starting out in Southwest Indiana, and I'm going to pass it to you guys as we get moving here. But those are the high schools that you see. Here's a quick look at the state finals that you see. And the first thing you'll see here is that number one, the AL is American Legion state titles. They have 28. That's more than any other region in the state. High school state titles, they have 19. That's more than any other region in the state. So, we're talking Evansville. Of course, next week we're going to talk about a lot of those players from Evansville. But before I get into a timeline of professional baseball players, I want to open it up, and maybe we'll start with Steve. When you think of Southwest Indiana and the rich baseball history, what do you think of? What teams are you thinking of when you think of Southwest Indiana?
First two that come to my mind are Evansville Memorial, and Jasper. And Jasper was in the first state finals in '67, and they've won all those titles. Memorial's won 3 of them. Evansville Memorial in 1978, that was their first of 3 titles. They've been in the state finals before that and after that, but they went 30-0, ran the table. Quentin Merkel was the coach. He was there for 40 plus years. He's in the Hall of Fame, of course. And they beat Blackford. And Blackford was in the state finals 2 years in a row. They were the runner-ups. And Craig Moore, who helped establish the Indiana Bulls, was their coach.
Yeah. He's at Zionsville now, right?
I'm kind of burying the lead because who played for Evansville Memorial was Don Mattingly.
Yeah.
And he didn't catch Sweet Lou either. But he hit coming into the state finals, he was hitting .489 with 5 home runs, 5 triples. Bossy Field, he still holds the single season or the career record for triples, but you hit it out. And Bossy Field was bigger then too than it is now. They moved the fences in, but you hit the ball and run and run. I'm not taking any away because you had to have the power to hit it there. And Jeff King was a winning pitcher in that championship game against Blackford. They won 7-1, and he's still, this record will never be broken because we're in class baseball now, but he had 12 strikeouts, and then Tom Dempsey of Wabash in '86 had 12, and that was a single class record for the championship game.
Wow. Well, I think that was
hear some more about Jasper.
Well, I'll tell you, we could have a whole show devoted to Jasper. Matter of fact, for the just a kind of a teaser, coming up in March, we're having our high school preview show, and I reached out. We're going to be talking to Coach Gobert, one of the 2 or 3 players in the Indiana Baseball Hall of Fame from Jasper. You got him and Coach Howard, I know, for 2 of them. I thought there was another one in there. I could be wrong.
Oh, coaches?
Yes. So that's kind of the, when you're thinking high school baseball in that area, obviously those are 2 of the programs you're going to think of historically. Let's look at professional baseball history in Southwest Indiana. Let's start out just with Evansville. I want to throw up a timeline here. And you guys, Steve, you can check my math and tell me if I'm wrong here. But here is the timeline I have for professional baseball in Indiana. We got some graphics and stuff also we're going to throw in there. But starting in 1877, the first, Evansville team that I was able to find came through, and that, over the years, this specific timeline goes 1877 to 1899. They were part of that original league alliance, which had some other teams across the state in it. Then part of the Northwest League and the Central League. We're talking the Evansville Reds, the Brewers, and the Hoosiers in that era. But then bring in 1895, the Blackbirds, and this is, again, these are Evansville teams. 1895, they come in the Southern League. Moving on from there, we've got the first River Rats. That's one of the popular professional team names in Evansville. They were part of that 3I League, which we're going to see a lot of teams as we go throughout this. They're also part of the Central League, excuse me. Real cool picture there, that 1908 Evansville River Rats right there. Moving on, 1911 and 1912, again in the Central League, and then in the Strikers. But then 1912, the Kitty League. Yeah, I'd actually never heard of that until I started researching this.
Kentucky, Indiana, Tennessee, I think, is where they derived that name from.
Say that again?
Kentucky, Indiana, Tennessee.
Ah, well, see, now I just learned something too on the show, and that's kind of nice. The 1911 Evansville Strikers, those numbers are wrote on there, but I love those E's on the sleeve right there. It's kind of hard to tell. The picture's not real clear. 1915, that's a big date. That's when Bosse came into play. Evansville, the Bosse Field, and still to this day, it is, and again, you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but it is the third oldest stadium in the United States, with an asterisk, third oldest stadium in the United States that still regularly hosts a professional baseball team, of course, behind Fenway and Wrigley. There is another older field down there. I can't remember the name of it. I think it's in Mississippi, but and actually there's another field in southern Indiana that's older than Bosse. But at the same time, then, the River Rats became the Evas about that same time, same franchise right there. Then in 1919, the Evansville Evans, over, the Black Sox, Little Evas, they were also called. 1925, that team in the 3I League, same franchise, moved over, changed the name to the Pocketeers. Then in 1926, the Hubs. This is old school baseball. This is where I love that. This is every small team in Indiana, the Midwest, really, they're jockeying for position. This is way before the Major League Baseball was formed. Everybody's trying to be the next Major League Baseball. 1938 through 57, you got the Evansville Bees, still part of that 3I League. 1957, they were changed the name to the Braves. Then in 1966 through 68, I think I got that timeline right. That's when you first get the White Sox, part of that Southern AA League right there. Then the American Association, 1974 through 84, the Evansville Triplets, they were American Association AAA, and there's a nice little picture. Look at those sideburns. That's 1970s, isn't it? And then 1995 to present, you have the Otters, part of that Frontier League. So that's just Evansville, but we have, Southern Indiana has more than just that. 1894, we got to throw this out there, League Stadium. Of course, it's famous for a lot of reasons. Number one, it's older than Bosse Field, and it had got a lot of notoriety for the movie A League of Their Own. It was home of the who was the girls team on the movie that
Rockford
it was home?
Peaches.
Yes, the Rockford Peaches. There you go. But 1896, the Washington Browns, part of that Kentucky Indiana League. 1904, 05, then again again in 1910 and again in 1913. Vincennes had a couple of teams. This is the first time we see Vincennes come on the map in the professional baseball scene in Indiana. They were part of that Kitty League known as the Reds. And then the Eastern Illinois League is when they become the Alices. And one thing, when you see that Alice's name, you'll see a lot of names that we're talking about in these professional baseball teams that show up as a high school team later on. Princeton comes into the show in 1905, part of that Kitty League. 1910 to 1913, West Baden Sprudels. I love this. A Negro League team. Look at those uniforms. I would give my left leg for one of those hats. Anybody has that? I'll just send you my wallet if you get one of those hats. Going on, the Vincennes Hoosiers. A lot of versions of the Hoosiers here we're going to see. They're part of that Kitty League in 1911. French Lick Plutos. They were right there beside West Baden, the Sprudels. And, of course, Sprudels, I guess, was some kind of water drink that they made there.
Sprudel was like a mythical creature, but it had something to do with the springs. And the Pluto is like Pluto water. That definitely was a nod to the mineral springs.
The minerals, yep, right there. Look at that. Look at that shot. Look at that picture right there. I should probably give credit for these photos, but hey, we're not getting paid for this. So, they can try to sue me. I love those uniforms right there. 1950 through 52, Vincennes back in the picture, the Citizens and the Velvets. And then Du Bois County Dragons, part of the Frontier League, 1999 to 2002. Of course, like I said, the Du Bois County Bombers are still playing there at that field. So that's the kind of the professional baseball history there in Southwest Indiana. Did I make any mistakes, guys? You see it, or am I missing anything? By the way, this show is sponsored by coffee. Let's move to Southeast Indiana. A lot of teams there that you see. That's 35 high school teams. Thing I want to point out there, look at that Little League, most state titles number. They're second in Little League state titles there in Southeast Indiana, because you look at you've got New Albany. Well, I'll just pull it up here. New Albany, Jeffersonville. Of course, Silver Creek is there now. I don't have Silver Creek, I believe. Yeah, Silver Creek, Sellersburg. They won it in 2019, and they were the runner-up this year to Brownsburg. So a lot of Little League rich history there in Southeast Indiana. There's 4 state titles. Of course, Providence won it last year. Lanesville back in 2017. Providence again in 2016, and Madison in 1999. By my record, that's your state titles from that area. But a lot of good fields down there too. The field in Madison is a great field. Matter of fact, they've held the North-South All-Star game down there a few times. Let's move on to South Central. And, a lot of teams here, and this really surprised me. Maybe you guys can chime in on this, but I'm looking at this, and I'm looking at Bloomington North, Bloomington South, Center Grove, Edgewood, Greenwood. There's some Seymour, Bedford North Lawrence, Bloomfield. There's a lot of great franchises down there, but when you're looking at state titles, not a big American Legion area. 3 high school state championships, and I don't have that in front of me. Can you guys recall who the 3 high school state championships are? Was it one of the Bloomington teams won it once, I believe. Off the top of my head, I can't recall. When I'm thinking of that Region 3 right there, and if you look above it, straight north, Region 8. Region 8, of course, we're going to talk about it later with Kokomo and Wabash and all those areas, but Region 8 also includes Noblesville and the northern border of central Indiana, Region 5. You're talking Noblesville, Westfield, Fishers, and then you look in the south, you've got Greenwood, Bloomington. So maybe not, the reason I say that, maybe not a lot of history in the past, but if we talked about current, these areas are thriving. It's a really rich area for training facilities, travel. The travel ball scene in these areas is really strong and growing. So that Region 8 and that southern area of Region 3 and that southern area of Region 8 are kind of similar. They don't have a lot of history, but going forward, they're making history. Let's move on to Region 4. We're going to talk about this one for a while. I'll pass it back to either of you, Jeff or Steve, either one. Of course, you've got Terre Haute. Like I said, you're talking Avon and Plainfield. Those are still kind of new historically, so not a lot going on there. But Crawfordsville has a lot going on. You'll see that. And Terre Haute, when it comes to the history of baseball in Indiana, Steve, I'll just throw it back to you again. When you're thinking Terre Haute, or that whole area there, that Region 4, West Central Indiana, what are you thinking? What's some of the teams? I'll tell you what stands out to me, first of all, is the American Legion program there in Terre Haute with Wayne Newton. The Hayes family.
46.
Yeah.
They've won several state titles. They've been the host of several state tournaments and tournaments in general.
Mm-hmm. And that Hayes family, like I was saying, they are American Legion royalty, I would say, when it comes to that. Plus Terre Haute, we're going to talk players next week, and the players from the Terre Haute area, there's going to be, that list is going to be as long as this list of schools you see right here in front of you. Little League state titles, most of those are Terre Haute. They're third in the state in Little League state titles. Second, we were talking about American Legion titles. Second in American Legion titles was 17, and I think all of those but maybe two. One of them is Blandford, Indiana, and then the other, and I think maybe Crawfordsville has one. If not, you're talking 15 or 16 of those American Legion state titles are all that Wayne Newton right there. Let's pull up a timeline here and let's talk historical baseball teams in West Central Indiana. And by my count, it all starts in 1884. 1884 through 1897, Terre Haute had a team. A lot of these historic teams, they were just the baseball team from that area, part of that Northwestern League, and then again the Central League. Those are two leagues that we're going to see a lot going on. Then the Crawfordsville, I mentioned that earlier. Crawfordsville comes into the scene with that very prevalent Indiana-Illinois League in 1889. 1888 to 1895, Crawfordsville and Terre Haute Hoosiers. The reason I say that is there's a lot of movement on these teams as well. Steve, you gave me a lot of information on this too when we were putting this together. The Crawfordsville team, I believe it was, they may have lasted only a few years in that Central Interstate League, and then they moved to Terre Haute. But they were both the Hoosiers, the same franchise.
You found teams moving in the middle of the season, and maybe it was financial or who knows what. The ballpark might have burned. There could have been any number of reasons.
Well, and that's one thing we were talking about with Mark last week, is that, the finances of baseball is as old as baseball itself. So, as I mentioned earlier, these teams jockeying for position and everything like that, they're changing names. They're doing everything they can to, get the finances on top. Then the Hottentots, that's one of the, more familiar names from historic baseball teams. They come onto the scene in 1891. Again, part of that original Indiana-Illinois league in the 3I League. Look at that picture right there. How awesome is that? Sharp-dressed man in the middle there. Look at that T. I love that old school lettering they put on those uniforms. Like to see some more throwback uniforms for those high school and college teams. Matter of fact, what do you got to do to get a college team to do a throwback uniform? We're going to make that happen. Linton puts their antes up and comes into the professional baseball scene in 1908, and I think it was just 1 year. They were also part of that Eastern Illinois League, and then we go to 1910 to 1916. This is where, like what we were talking about earlier, the Terre Haute changed names quite a bit. This is all one franchise, though. They were part of that Central League, 1910 to 1916. They started out with the Hottentots. It was that moving down from where they were in the Indiana-Illinois League. Then they became the Stags, and the Stags became the Miners. The Miners became the Terriers. The Terriers became the Highlanders. Just a lot of movement. Look at that Terre Haute Terriers. Look at that old photo right there. I love it. 1910 to 1937. Now, I believe this is a different franchise because they're going kind of simultaneously here. And I'm going to show you a picture of that old Memorial Stadium because baseball was thriving in Terre Haute back in the day. Terre Haute, it started out of the Browns, then it became the Tots. The Tots became the Coles became the Tots again. This is all going on from 1910 to 1937, part of that Illinois, Iowa, and then the Illinois, Indiana, Iowa League, which was the predecessor to the 3I League. And the 3I League is the one league that has all kind of history. Look at that photo right there from 1924, the Terre Haute Tots. 1923, Memorial Stadium comes into the picture for the first time. Memorial Stadium, let's just take a look at it here real quick. When you look at that great picture right there, first of all, look how big those stands were. I mean, they hold a ton of people. And what else do you see on there? Lights. Pretty neat to see right there. 1923. Of course, that is the same place.
The same site where the football field is now.
Exactly. That is where ISU plays their football games right now for sure. I think we already saw that photo. Then 1946 to 1956, I believe 56 is when baseball ended in Terre Haute. still part of that 3I league. You had the Terre Haute Phillies, and they were affiliated with the Phillies that we know today. Then they became affiliated with the Tigers, and then I believe they lost their affiliation. They were just the Terre Haute Huts. Before we move on to Central, any recap thoughts on that area there? I mean, Terre Haute has a history of professional baseball in Indiana as rich as anywhere. Now, Central Indiana, as we move through this, just taking a look at my time, because you guys know the rule here. You got to rein me in. We'll make this thing go to 10 o'clock. Central Indiana moving along. A lot of schools there. Little League titles 4, American Legion titles 1. American Legion, we're gonna get American Legion going again back in Central Indiana. I'm gonna work on that. High school state titles, they're third with 16 state titles, and here's because if you look, remember I was talking earlier, that southern part of Region 8 kind of ties in with the northern part of Region 5. So you had Hamilton Southeastern and University winning it in 2019. Fisher's winning it in 18. Of course, you bring in Cardinal Ritter, you bring in Cathedral, Roncalli. Of course, we have Brownsburg in the mix there, but Brownsburg's supposed to be in 7. This picture was made before I made that change. But a lot of the Indianapolis teams right there, a lot of state championships, and I think that's going to continue to grow because you have that northern Hamilton or the southern part of Hamilton County right there, which is just a hotbed for baseball for the high school levels. Now, let's look at the timeline for this right here, because there is a really, we talked about Terre Haute, a lot of history in Indiana. Of course, it ends with the Indians where they are now. By my count, it started in 1877, and they were playing at the South Street Park. Now, that'll come into play because I'll show you some of the pictures of the other parks here in a minute, with the Indianapolis Blues and the Indianapolis Capital Cities, 2 different leagues, the National League and then the Keystone Association. I should have put a dot after that Keystone Association right there, shouldn't I? That probably does. Then 1878 to 1901, the Indianapolis Hoosiers come into play. Now, there's 2 different franchises of Hoosiers. This is one of them that you see on my head, but it's not this one. This was part of the National Association, the American Association, National League, and Western League there for just about 38 years, just under 30 years. Look at that picture right there. Look at those hats. Once again, somebody comes across one of those hats, I'm just going to send you my wallet. I want one. Moving on, 1900. What's that, Steve?
I noticed those handlebar mustaches they have too.
You won't see me wearing one of those though. I love retro baseball, but I'm not going to. I can't pull off one of those mustaches. 1900, you have the first Washington Park. I even got the address on there. You can jot that address down there and look at where it was. And then let's look at the new Washington Park number 2. And that's the address. Look at that grandstand right there. I wish they would make some of those. Those old those old wood grandstands were just a fire hazard. Indianapolis Indians come into play in 1902 is when they formed. I believe their first year of play was 1903. Of course, over the years they were in different leagues, but look at that right there. Those numbers I think are hand drawn on the picture itself. But look at that eye. Like I said earlier, that those old school lettering. I wish that would come back. Now we're talking about the hat that I have on. This is a pretty neat story right here for the Federal League. I put 19 and 13 through 1914 down there because that was the only 2 full seasons of the Federal League, and it was actually correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe it was 1914 they became an official sanctioned major league. But they folded in 1915, and the Hoosier Feds, the Indianapolis Hoosiers, but to differentiate them from the previous Indianapolis Hoosiers, they called them the Hoosier Feds or the Who Feds, because it was a different franchise. But they moved out east, and I can't think off the life of me where they moved to. New Jersey. It was in New Jersey they moved to. In 1915, and then the league folded in 1915. But the neat thing about this, here's a neat little piece of trivia for you. The only 2 years that the Federal League existed, and it was an official major league, 1913 and 1914, that's the only 2 full seasons, our Indianapolis Hoosiers won the pennant or won the title both of those years. 1920 through 19. Now, I'll tell you what, we could have a whole show on the history of the Negro Leagues in Indianapolis because it is rich. The first, by my count, that comes onto record was 1920. The Indianapolis ABCs come in, and they were part of that inaugural franchise with the Negro National League, and then later they became the Negro American League. But they ended up in 1939. Look at that picture right there. Man, I love that. There's a bunch of good-looking dudes right there, right around 1920. Then 1931, we're talking stadiums in this part of the state. It was originally called Perry Stadium. Not a lot of people know that. Let's look at the history. This is what we all know it as Bush Stadium. 1942 to 1967, though, it was actually called Victory Field, like our current Victory Field. They named it that. They had of course, if you look at that timeline, 1942, because of the war that was going on, they had a public poll to see what to name it, and they named it Victory Field. Then in 1967, it was renamed to Bush Stadium. And then last year of existence, 1966, it actually still exists. It's an apartment complex actually now. It's a pretty cool apartment complex. But that was starting in 1931. 1937, more Negro League action going on in Indianapolis, and a lot of these teams are tied together. The Athletics in 37, 1940, the Indianapolis Crawfords, and then in 1944 and 1950. And the reason I put ... after that for the Indianapolis Clowns is even though they were not part of the Negro American League, the Indianapolis Clowns were the last of that Negro League genre, that Negro League family of leagues that existed all throughout the 20th century. They were the last ones standing. They were still barnstorming up into the 1980s. And just what a great history right there. I do have a Clowns hat, but I would love one of those jerseys right there. Picture from 1944 there. Then, of course, 1996, the field that we all know and love, Victory Field. Look at that view right there. That is crazy. Just absolutely love it. That was Central Indiana. Now let's move to the east part of the state, and it rightfully so. As we look at this, we're talking Richmond, we're talking Anderson, we're talking Muncie. A lot of rich history in that part of the state too. A big part of the state, pretty spread out in Little League. They got 4 state titles in Little League, or not 4. They're ranked 4th. They have 7 state titles in Little League, 7 state titles in American Legion, and 4 in high school. They're ranked 8th overall. But let's look at a timeline here too. By my count, and again, guys, check my math. 1890 is where it all began, and that was the Indiana State League, which we're going to see that a lot more, especially when we get to Region 8. But look at some of those names in Muncie. The Fruit Jars, the Reds, the Packers. That name's horrible. Right, Mark? The Anderson comes on the scene, too, from 1890 to 1911. Primarily, they were known as the Orphans. Just like a lot of the teams, though, from that time of the state, they didn't have a name for a long time, but primarily they were known as the Orphans. Look at that 1950 Muncie Reds right there. Jeff, you like one of them jerseys? We're both Reds fans. We need to get us one of them. 1896, Rushville gets on the scene here in the Indiana State League. That Indiana State League was in 1890, then again in I think 1893, then 1896. Like you'll see later, it was the league that just kept trying. Rushville was there for just 1 year. 1899, McCullough Park there in Muncie was formed. 1901, the Matthews Hoosiers. That was just a little jaunt from the Indianapolis Hoosiers. They moved over to Matthews for 1 year. 1907, Portland. A lot of people don't know these. I didn't know Portland had a team. 1907, they were part of that Ohio-Indiana League for just a year. Then Richmond, 1908 to 1952, they were known as the Quakers, the Roses, the Tigers, and a lot of different leagues there. The Indiana-Ohio League, the Central League, Ohio State League, and the Ohio-Indiana League. That Ohio, Indiana, Michigan, Illinois, they just swapped the names 100 times. Then in 1936, McBride Stadium comes into play there in Richmond. Now, I'll tell you, it wasn't mentioned there, but there's a good book out on the history of Negro League baseball in Richmond, and it's pretty rich there as well. I didn't have a lot of pictures to use for it. But and if I had that book name for Steve, you don't remember the name of that book off the top of your head, do we? Need to have that guy on the show.
Alex Painter is the author. I'm trying to remember the name of the book.
Yep, Alex Painter is the author. Great book. Now let's move over to Jeff's neck of the woods here. Jeff, I'm going to call on you to do some talking here. I've been the only one talking here so much as we wrap things up. We got about 10, 15 minutes left to go, but let's talk about that area. Like I said earlier, it starts at Brownsburg and moves northwest. I think the northern border there is like DeMott, if I remember right. But a lot of teams there, Little League, they have 5 state titles. American Legion, they're 6. They have 6 state titles. High school, they're 5th with 14 state titles. That puts them 5th overall. Before we start talking about our timeline, Jeff, let's talk about, I think there's some historic franchises going back there in Lafayette, starting from Spider Fields. And I know we want to talk about the Brownsburg. So let me pass it over to you for a second, and let's talk about a couple of those franchises over there in Region 7. Well, and if you would speak up a little bit, I think your audio was a little low last time.
Hopefully it's all right now, but I just wanted to remind people, Loeb Stadium, we got a new Loeb Stadium. I'm kind of caught off guard here as far as you going way, way back here as far as what was in the region. I just remind people, Lafayette Jeff, 2 state championships, 1969 and also 1973. They defeated Bloomington in 1969, and then, of course, the Slicers of LaPorte in 1973, and they also have a runner-up in 1971. But I'm kind of going to stick on the word streaks because they still hold the second Lafayette Jeff I'm talking about. They still hold the second consecutive wins at 45, and that was ended in 1967. And then they also had a 31 consecutive win streak back in 1971. Of course, coached by Spider Fields, which still has the highest winning percentage of 850. His record 404 and 70. And then getting a little south down toward Indianapolis, you talked about the Brownsburg Bulldogs, and I've had my mind on them for several months here, trying to get Tucker Barnhart's high school records. Of course, who can forget 2005? Pat O'Neill's Brownsburg Bulldogs went 35-0, and what a team they had. I talked to Pat yesterday when I gave him the scorebooks back, and he wanted me to remind everybody that they were voted by the Indianapolis Star as one of the all-time greatest high school teams in Indiana. So, Pat, we got your 2 cents in there. And then, as far as other championships, obviously, we can't forget Coach Tim Bourdonnais, Hall of Famer Tim Bourdonnais, Lafayette Central Catholic. He's won 7 state championships there, and but as far as going back, I really probably needed to do some more homework, and I apologize for that. Dan, maybe I can make that up. Give me a rain check, and I'll go back farther.
I'm about to make it up for you right now, because we're gonna talk about the at least the professional baseball timeline right now. But before we do that, I'm going to put a little teaser there, because you mentioned the 35-0 Brownsburg Bulldogs and how the Indianapolis Star called them the number 1 high school baseball team of all time in Indiana. And I think Jared Parker might have something to say about that, wouldn't he, Mark?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we need to get that debate on here with him and Lance Lynn.
Well, we're going to make that happen. Jared and Lance, if you guys are listening to that, we need that debate to happen. I think Mark's going to talk about that team when we get over there to Region 11. Let's talk about some of the professional baseball history in that mid-northwest, that Region 7 right there. Of course, by my book, I see it starting about 1888. The Lafayette, look at some of these names, the Wets, the Farmers, the Chiefs, and the Red Sox back in they ended up there in 1987. Then part of that Indiana State League that we're going to see a lot here more later. Frankfort comes into the picture. Frankfort, currently home of the Frankfort Hot Dogs high school team. They had a professional team back in 1888, and that was that inaugural season of the Indiana State League. Look at that Lafayette Red Sox right there, 1956. What an awesome photo. Moving on to 1940, Loeb Stadium #1 came into the play. That's what that right there is the stadium where Lance Lynn pitched that final out. That 35-0 2005 Brownsburg team is at that stadium. And moving to 1943, just a little known fact, the Cleveland Indians actually played their spring training games in Lafayette, Indiana. And 1969 to 1971, I wanted to throw this out here. Of course, we're talking professional baseball timeline, but I thought this was cool. 1969 to 1971, then again 1973 to 2017. I think it's too late to do math, but I'm thinking 48 years right there. The Colt League World Series was held right there at Loeb Stadium in Lafayette. That's part of the Pony League system. It's 16U. Is the age bracket there that they held that World Series. Then 2021, the new Loeb Stadium was built right there. I think I see Jeff through the window right there behind home plate. One of the best views right there. I didn't show you look over left field, you got the big water park in the background. I mean, Jeff, you got the best seat in the house sitting up there doing the scoreboard for the Aviators.
No doubt about it. The water park in left field, Columbia Park, the zoo in center field, and also in right field. And then you get a hard right, you're going to go over and get some ice cream at the Frozen Custard. And then if you want to go ahead and do some pregame, you can get a Arnie's Pizza or even a salad over there. So it's a great, just a great area. And like I said, from the outset of the show here, we're working hard to, we'd love to land that all-star series in 23, Dan.
Well, and I tell you, that's kind of a good segue because, the Lafayette Stadium and the Municipal Stadium in Kokomo, which is the area that we're going to now, mid-north central, really kind of similar in just a great community facility. I mean, it's not just for baseball games. I mean, they just have a lot going on, and we're going to talk about that. As we go to here's the state titles in mid-north central. Of course, kind of like that Region 7 there, they're equally distributed, but then you've got that 4 high school, or the 15 high school state championships ranks this part of the state as 4th for high school state championships. And we're going to talk next week because there are a ton. Matter of fact, Kokomo High School, I believe, historically has put the most players in the bigs compared to any other high school in the state. So we're going to hit that real big in the coming weeks. But as we look at a timeline here, again, 1888, there's that Indiana State League. And this Region 8 is a good history in that Indiana State League. It starts out in 1888 in the region. Marion, they had a baseball team. Then the Logansport Oilers had a baseball team, both in that Indiana State League. Then 1899 to 1901, the first Wabash professional team comes on the scene with the Wabash Brownies. They were also called the Sycamores there at one time or another. This is a different league, though. This is the Indiana-Illinois League. Kokomo also throws their hat in for the first time in the professional scene there in 1899. And then Indiana State League tries again in 1890. And Marion and Logansport are there, and Kokomo and Peru throw their hat in. They're going to say, hey, let's try this Indiana State League. Indiana State League folds again. Then they try it again in 1896. Logansport's still there. This time they're called the Autos. Marion Glass Blowers. Marion, it's the first time I saw an actual team name for Marion, the Glass Blowers. And, of course, Wabash and Peru are still there. Carry over from that 1819 version of the Indiana State League. And now Elwood comes onto the scene, and Wabash throws their hat in for the Indiana State League. But this is the first time we see Elwood come on the scene there in 1896. Marion has a pretty neat history here from 1903 to 1911. They were the oil workers, the boosters, and then I put the vehicles right there. That was kind of an adopted name because the Flint, Michigan vehicles team transferred over to Marion midway through. I think it was that last year, 1911. So the Marion team, they might have been called the vehicles. I'm not for sure. That's part of the Interstate Association. originally, but then over that span of just about 8 or 9 years there, they were also part of the Northern Indiana League, and then the Northern State of Indiana League, two different leagues. Wabash is back on the scene here in 1909 to 1911 as the Wabash Rockeries. Another neat name there. Too bad we don't have Chris on the show here for this for the Wabash here. I'm thinking he's probably listening on his way home from Florida. 1910 and through 1911, Logansport's back on the scene as the Whitecaps. That's one of the more popular known names for the Logansport professional baseball. They were part of that Northern State of Indiana League. Then 1907 to 1961, this is kind of the rest of the Kokomo baseball history. They were known as the Combines, the Wildcats, and then the Giants and the Dodgers, also, affiliated with the modern day Giants and Dodgers. Part of that Ohio Indiana League, the North Indiana League. The MOV, I'm not for sure what the actual name of that league is in the Midwest League. Highland Park, which still stands, was built in 1955. Matter of fact, Steve and I and Jeff too were just there for the American Legion State Finals this year, and that field is still in great condition. The field is immaculate. It's like a carpet on the field, but it's natural grass. The reason I know, number one, we saw it. Number two, I saw Marchand out there working on it. And anything he works on is going to look great. That 1956 Kokomo Dodgers at Highland Park there. Look at that grandstand. That part's not there anymore, but the nice picture there from the 1956 Kokomo Dodgers. And then, of course, 2015, this is that Kokomo Municipal Stadium. I could have probably found a better picture there. 2015 and 2016, Ballpark Digest Best Summer Collegiate Facility right there. You can see how Lafayette Aviators kind of tailored it a little bit after that stadium, but then took it up a few notches, just a little more modern there. But great history in that part of the state. We're moving up to Northwest, and Steve, I know you're going to chime in here and talk about, this is one of my favorite parts of the state right here. Just a lot of history on so many levels. There's the teams you see. State titles right here. They're second overall. So the corners of the state, you got 9 in the Northwest there, and is second in the state in state titles, and following only the Southwest part of the state, which is first. One thing I want to highlight, let me go back a slide there. I went too fast because I want to show you this. Everybody knows that I'm a fan of Little League. Geez, Dan, there we go. Let's try this again. We're going to go back a few slides. Live TV, folks, isn't it great? We're going to go back. I can't let this go because it's Little League. Previous slide, and previous one more time. Here's what I wanted to show you. This is the history of Little League state champions in Indiana from 1960 all the way to 2021 when Brownsburg won it this year. But you see those two in the green right there. We're going to talk about these in future episodes because that 1971 and 1972 Little League teams, Gary Anderson and then Hammond Edison. Of course, that 1971 was when Lloyd McClendon played for the Little League team. Now, both of those teams, this is the neat fact. This is why I spent the last 3 minutes trying to get back to this slide, is that those two teams are the only two teams in the history of Indiana that went all the way to play in the final Little League World Series against Taiwan, and they did it in back-to-back years. And there's a lot of debate on which team was better, but Lloyd McClendon pretty much changed the Little League atmosphere. He had so many home runs. Of course, first of all, this was 1971 was the first year that they allowed the aluminum bat in Little League, in the Little League tournament. And Lloyd McClendon comes up there and he was scaring those little 12-year-old pitchers like crazy. I think they intentionally walked him the whole last game. But they both lost in that final game. 71 team with Lloyd McClendon probably would have won it, but I think Lloyd McClendon had a no-hitter going into like the 7th, which is extra innings for Little League, and then they finally had to take him out, and then that's when Taiwan scored the runs. But just a couple great stories right there. Now let's go to the timeline, but before we do, Steve, let's pass things over to you. I've been talking so much, I need to get another drink of our sponsored coffee here, and let's pass things over to you, and let's talk about some of those historic teams in Northwest Indiana. I think
you're talking about on the high school side?
What's that?
You're talking about on the high school side?
Yeah, high school side or any side you want to talk about there. I know you were wanting to talk about LaPorte, which is right there kind of on the corner, but there's a lot
Yeah,
of
LaPorte,
historic
I guess,
teams.
is in 10 technically on your map there, but LaPorte has won 8 state titles, 7 in the single class era.
Mm-hmm.
The first one was in 1967. I can tell you some things about that team if you'd like.
Well, I'll tell you what, I want to ask you all a question here real quick before we
Okay.
go through these last 3 sections of the state, because we talked about this number, not Northwest Indiana, and in LaPorte, we talked about this on last show. When you go into LaPorte, Indiana, it says the capital of baseball in Indiana. Of course, there's been arguments in newspapers saying that Jasper is the capital of baseball in Indiana. We still need to talk about Section 10 and Section 11 here. But let's take a break here for a second. I want to ask you one question. Where is the capital of baseball in Indiana right now? I'm putting you on the spot. Let's start with, I'm going to put you on the spot first, Steve. Where would you say is the capital of baseball in Indiana right now?
I'm going to cop out a little bit, but I'm going to say it's in Hamilton County. Yeah. So I won't pick a specific school because there's a whole bunch of good ones right there. Hamilton Southeastern, Westfield, Carmel, Noblesville, Fishers, Zionsville's in Boone County, but it's right near there. On and on. It just seems to be the epicenter of baseball training. Grand Park is right there. Finch Creek Fieldhouse, on and on. It's Pro X. Yep. Athlete development's right down at Grand Park. So they got, professional baseball players training there. They got the college leagues at Grand Park. I think that's the.
Well, I
think that's the capital of baseball in my mind.
Before I give my opinion, Jeff and Mark, any argument to that?
It's hard to argue. They got more people. They're going to have better teams. They're going to have more teams. So, yeah, I'd say that area is pretty strong.
It is a population center for sure. A suburb population center. A good income part of the state, which leads to a lot of the better facilities and things like that. When I ask the question, what is the richest part of baseball, or the capital of baseball in Indiana, or the richest part of baseball in Indiana, I look at it from a different perspective. I look at it from, kind of the fan perspective, as well as, the coaches and the scene itself. And that's why I asked this question here on 9, because I think it's a tie between Northwest Indiana and Fort Wayne. Because when I look at those 2 areas right there, not only are we seeing talent come out year in and year out, but the competitiveness of the high school teams, the little league teams, even the Babe Ruth teams, the American Legion teams, all those amateur teams, plus they have professional baseball teams in both of those areas right there. But I think the camaraderie, the kind of the brotherhood amongst coaches, when I'm up there, the fans are lively, and it's they're strong fans. They're very argumentative, I guess you could say, but that in a good way. So from a fan perspective, I'm going to say it's where we're at right now in Northwest Indiana, the region specifically, and Fort Wayne. So that's my argument. Let's move on though real quick, because let's talk about the history of professional baseball in Indiana. I'm kind of running through these real quick. Hammond comes on the scene in 1895. Then the Gary Sandfleas, one of the best mascot monikers right there. Then I told you right here, built in 1942, one of the neatest stadiums right here. East Chicago still plays there. That's that old E.J. Block Field. We just know it as Block Field.
Going through renovations right now. It'll really look good when that's done.
Yep, just a great historic field up there, built in 1942. Of course, 2011, I bring this up, Oil City Stadium was built, and I know, the Northwest Oilmen aren't really, that's a college summer league team, but I'll show you why I bring that up here in a second. The Steel Yard, home of the Gary South Shore Railcats, still a professional team in the American Association, they're affiliated, was built in 2002, another great stadium up there. First of all, Steel Yard is one of the best names for a baseball field in the state. And this is why I brought up that Oil City Stadium right there, because the Northern League was formed this year. It was that Midwest Collegiate Summer League, but now it's not a college summer league. It's not affiliated. It's not pro, but it's kind of a hybrid. It's a draft league, so it's not limiting itself to just college kids. It's the kids that are out of college and maybe they played rookie ball and or removed from their team. They want to still go. It's kind of one of those in between leagues right there. So I wanted to throw that out there because I think it's going to be a big thing moving forward. Let's go into Steve's region here, North Central Indiana, as we get close to wrapping things up. State titles, you got to mention the high school state titles up there. That goes back to the Reinbold era and so many others up there in that area that you're going to talk about. I think, Steve, you might have a few things to mention. A lot of history up there. Before we go into this, Steve, you got any comments on that North Central area right there?
Well, I'm excited about that. The new iteration of the Northern League. It was just announced last week that Crown Point was going to have a team.
Yes.
The what are they called? The Lake County Corn Dogs.
Corn Dogs, yes.
I love that. And most of all but two of the teams I have 8, I think, in that league play their games in Indiana. So, and the rest of them are right across the Illinois line. So that's
really a tight knit community.
They just put out a word that they're looking for broadcast interns, like college kids, high school kids, for some of those teams. So if you're interested in that, you might look into the Northern League.
Well, they're partnering. Yeah, they're partnering with one of the media firms up there to broadcast a lot of their games too. I love what Don Popovich said. He's the president of the league. He wanted to keep all the teams tight right there. He wanted that region competitiveness to go into this league, and I think it was just brilliant.
Yeah, I agree with you.
So we're talking South Bend. What are some of those historic teams in South Bend? I know you probably got some things to mention. South Bend Clay. There's a bunch of them.
South Bend Clay. With Jim Reinbold, and Joel Reinbold, his son, is running the program now. Coach Reinbold was one of the founding fathers of the Indiana High School Baseball Coaches Association. Won over 600 games, and he was in pro ball for the longest time. Great gentleman. His 70 team won the state title. They went 39-3.
Wow.
I know that Spider Field's team won 40 games one year, so they got him beat. But that's back when there was, they were. I imagine they try to play 28 games now or 30 with the tournament to get that many games in. They were playing just about every day, but baseball was important, and that's why they thought so, and that's why they started the association and all that. And in more recent times, Penn High School with Greg Dykes coaching has had 4 state titles and a runner-up. So that's a big deal. Mishawaka Marion has been a runner-up a couple of times. 2017, South Bend St. Joe won a state title. So there's a lot of good baseball going on. I would be remiss if I didn't mention 2013 and the Elkhart Central Blue Blazers. The last 2 years, it's been the Elkhart Lions because Central and Memorial went together.
Yep.
So those are a few of the teams in recent decades.
And you mentioned
around here.
You mentioned Reinbold and Spider Fields and Schreiber at LaPorte were really the 3 people that headed up high school baseball in Indiana and made it what it is.
A lot of those are, yes. Bill Jones,
yes,
over there in what you got calling Region 11, because he was in DeKalb High School for all those years, and he was the executive director, the secretary of the association, and kind of passed that mantle on to Brian Abbott.
Yep. Let's look at the timeline here for professional baseball in the area. And I tell you, I had to bundle up some of these because, I could go through 10 slides just for the history here. Look at those South Bend Green Stockings back in 1878. Love it. Absolutely love it. That's going back a ways. 1888, we know what league this is. That's the Indiana State League. Elkhart comes into the scene there, as well as a team from South Bend. Elkhart, now South Bend bowed out of the Indiana State League in 1890 anyway. Elkhart said, let's try it again. Here's kind of a skinny version summary of one of the franchises in South Bend, the one that was part of the Central D League, Southern Michigan League, and then the Central B League later. From 1903 to 32, the Greens, they brought that name forward again. The Broncos, the Bucks, the Benders, and the Twins for that franchise. Look at that picture from 1910, South Bend Broncos. How many teams you get to see doing their baseball picture all suited up like that anymore? South Bend Benders from 1914, so another more great picture there. Elkhart comes back on the scene in 1910 with the Indiana-Michigan League, and then South Bend Giants, part of the Negro Leagues. Now, I put 1936 here, but there's documentation that the Negro Leagues from South Bend goes back to the 1890s. But as far as like sanctioned play, 1936, then on and off again, all the way up to 96, they were still doing some performances anyway, kind of like the barnstorming days, the South Bend Giants. Then we had to mention this, of course, 1943, the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League came into play because, all the men were out to war. So 1943 to 1954, the South Bend Blue Sox were a thing. And there they are right there, All-American Girls Professional Baseball League. They're in South Bend. Michigan City Whitecaps, 1956 to 58. They were part of the Midwest C Division League. Love this picture right here. That looks like a fun group of dudes right there. I bet that season was fun. Then, of course, Four Win Fields comes into play, 1987. The South Bend, they start out the White Sox, then they went to the Silverhawks, now they're with the Cubs in that high A division. Still a thing up there. What a beautiful field. Absolutely love Four Win Fields up there. That's kind of a quick summary of baseball in that area. Let's wrap things up in Region 11. Mark, this is where I'm going to call on you. I think you got a couple teams to talk about up there. Here's the Little League. They're tied for sixth with 4 Little League state titles. High school, 13 high school state titles in that area right there. Before we talk about the timeline, I know, there's a little bit of argument, like you were saying there, about with Jared Parker's team also being undefeated. We do need to have them on the show. What's some of the teams that stand out to you up there in this region? Because this is right where you're at.
Fort Wayne Carroll, 2010, 2011, won state championships. They're the only, since class sports came in, they're the only 4A school that's gone back to back.
Wow.
And they had some guys. They had some quality players. Curtis Wise being one of them. He was their number one in 2010. Curtis played for me, and so I can speak personally. He was probably the most mentally tough pitcher I ever had. He's one of those guys that runner on third and one out, he'd find a way to get out of it without that runner scoring. And I'm sure the Carroll coach Dave Ginder, this spring will be his 20th season at Carroll as the head coach. And him and I talk a lot. He's a guy I really respect in his program and the way he runs it. They have great facilities there. Their field is gorgeous, taken care of by the team and not by the maintenance crew at the school. Dave works his butt off, and I respect that. And every year, he has players, and every year they're to be reckoned with in Northeast Indiana. We have to respect that. Over the years, I can't think of anybody that's worked harder than he has. And, I told him today when I texted him and told him I was going to talk about his teams and his school. He was very appreciative, and as I am, of the things he does to help us out. But, back in, I know I don't go back as far as you guys do, and I do, Dan, I'm not a history guy, but I do.
We joked about that in the last show, yeah.
I respect that. You do a good job, and I'm sitting here learning, while I'm listening to you and talk about all the history in this area, because I know Fort Wayne had one of those women's leagues. I just watched the show, League of Our Own, just the other day, and I think they were called the Daisies, the Fort Wayne Daisies. And there's still a lot of people in this area that used to live by someone that played on the Daisies, so that's kind of cool. And to go back and watch it show and things like that, it's pretty neat.
Well, I tell you, and you're talking about Gitter, just a great guy too. I got to meet him a couple times. For parents that have kids that play for him, they're in good hands with him leading. You mentioned the Daisies here. We could talk. Fort Wayne probably has one of the richest histories of baseball in Indiana for sure. We could talk just about these teams and fill a whole show, but not just Fort Wayne. Bluffton Dregs, and later called the Babes, Decatur Admirals, Huntington Miamis, and later called the Johnnies. Legionnaire had a team. You mentioned Daisy's part of that All-American Girls Professional League. Of course, right now we have the Tin Caps up there, which before that they were the Wizards. A lot of history, but when I'm talking history, and Steve, warm up your final out here, we're getting ready to wrap things up. But before we do, the main history that I want to talk about, and I hinted at this last week, one of the biggest parts of history in baseball in the country, or history of baseball period, comes in 1871, the Fort Wayne Kikiangas. Look at that picture right there. So the history of this, I'll show you this monument right here stands, and Sabre, the Sabre organization in Fort Wayne are the people that had this monument made. It's at a park, and I was actually at this park a few years ago to see this monument, and I'm going to read it to you on why it's so important. If you don't know this history about Fort Wayne, this is as rich as it gets when it comes to baseball history in Indiana. I'll just read part of what it says on the back of that monument. The first Major League Baseball game, now called the first game in a professional league, and that's the asterisk that makes this legit, was played here May 4th, 1871. Kikianga, the Fort Wayne Kikiangas, that's their name, is named after a Native American tribe in the area, whitewashed Cleveland 2-0. That was the Cleveland Forest Cities was the name of that team. 2-0 in what was then acclaimed the greatest game ever played. It remained the lowest score in the 5-year history of the National Association. Before I read the rest of this, the reason this is significant is because the National Association, if you look at Major League Baseball from a genealogy standpoint, think of it that way. Major League Baseball, if you go back on the associations that eventually became Major League Baseball, National Association is as far back as you go. Every other league, like all these leagues we talked about in the previous parts of the show, basically disbanded, and they don't exist anymore. But this National Association, formed in 1871, the lineage of that league led to Major League Baseball, and it's the oldest of that lineage. And the first game in that league was May 4th, 1871. So was it the first professional baseball game? No. But it was the first professional baseball game in a league that led to modern day Major League Baseball, and it was right there in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Bottom part of that, the sad part of the story, the central grandstand, known as the Grand Duchess, was modeled after its namesake in Cincinnati, and then on November 5th, 1871, all structures were destroyed by a fire and never rebuilt. That's kind of what I said there at the beginning when I said, these grandstands that were made of wood. They were absolutely gorgeous, but boy, they were fire hazards. And unfortunately, that's what happened there. Now, the team itself existed in 1869 to 1871, but they were part of that National Association in 1871, and that's why it was so significant. So that is our history of baseball across Indiana. We had a little technical glitch there at the beginning. I know we still have a few people chimed in here with us. I appreciate it. We'll have this up on YouTube later this week, but to catch it again. But that's kind of the cliff notes, if you will, of the history of baseball teams in Indiana. And next week, we're going to talk about history of baseball players, some of those notable baseball players, and there are many in Indiana. Matter of fact, just a kind of a little teaser, if you look over the last 5 years in the Major League Baseball draft, if you took the Ohio River and spread it out all across America, separated north and south, because we all know baseball is largest in the South. When you're talking Mississippi, Georgia, Alabama, Florida, Texas, southern part of California. But you go above the Ohio River and nobody competes with Indiana. Indiana is the top of the list when it comes to draft picks, and we stand with anybody as far as historical players north of that Ohio River, that fictitious Ohio River that spreads all the way across the state. So that's our history for the show. Be sure to join us next week at 8 o'clock. And Steve, as we wrap things up, I want to pass it over to you. I think you got some more history for today's Final Out.
This is the Final Out, January 30th, 2022. We're in a Major League Baseball lockout right now, and there's many issues. But one of them is a designated hitter. The DH debuted in the MLB in 1973. And as most know, the American League adopted it, and the National League did not. Anderson Highland grad Adam Lind came along and won the Edgar Martinez Award as a top DH in 2009. Now, some in MLB now want to come up with the international DH, which means that both the NL and the AL will have it like they did in the 2020 season. Looks like it's inevitable. But did you know that Indiana played a part in getting the DH adopted in high school baseball? In 1975, Indiana was invited by the National Federation of High School Associations, which is now located in Indianapolis, to experiment with the DH rule. It was not mandatory, but teams were allowed to use a hitter for any starting player, not just a pitcher, and all subsequent substitutes for that player in the same game. The DH had to be selected at the start of the contest and be included on lineup cards and the official scorebook. The DH was considered a starting player and the subject to all considerations of the re-entry rule. The only time a DH would not be allowed to re-enter is if the player he is batting for would pinch hit for him. This would terminate the DH rule for the remainder of the game. So nearly 50 years later, some coaches choose to use the DH while others swear by it. How about you?
Absolutely love it. Good way to close things out with a little bit of history. Folks, we'll see you next week. Thank you for joining us. And next week will be technical glitch free, I say, hopefully. See you next week. Thanks.
Good show.